Oh, good day.
Hi.
I see you're quite interested in forest and the lake and also the animals grazing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but did you know that there's a peatland quite nearby?
A peatland?
What is that?
Well, actually, I'm a tour guide, and if you want to, I could give you a tour. We could explore it together.
Let's go.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Peatlands, ancient and very diverse ecosystems that have been forming on the Earth for tens of thousands of years. Peatlands are extremely diverse. Fens, transition mires, raised bogs, bog forests, swamp woods, and other peatland types are all unique ecosystems. They are home to highly specialized species of plants and animals. They form beautiful mosaics and dynamically change into one another over hundreds and thousands of years.
What is a peatland?
Basically, peatlands are places where peat is formed.
And how it's formed?
For peatland to form, it usually takes place with shallow level of water that remains still and constant. These places are usually located near rivers or lakes. In time, these wet places they become saturated with nutrients, and therefore the oxygen can no longer dissolve in water. Therefore, normal decomposing processes cannot occur anymore, and the dead plant mass just accumulates, forming layers upon layers.
So we are standing on dead plants here?
Yeah, this is called fen. This is the stage where plants still receive nutrients from groundwaters.
How many stages there is?
There are 3 stages in general. This is the first one, and the plants that are most usually common here are sedges, cotton grasses, and reeds.
In calcareous fens, the groundwater is rich in calcium, and therefore it is home to different species of primulus and orchids. The second stage is transitional mire, which receives most of its moisture from rainwaters. Both various sedges and sphagnum grow here. As the plants decompose, the layer of peat starts to form. Once the layer of peat has become wholly rain-fed, the third stage, or the raised bog, has formed. It is characterized by a mosaic of bog pools, sphagnum-covered surface, and a dome shape, with the center of the raised bog being a few meters higher.
Is this still a peatland?
Yeah.
But it's dry.
Yeah, I
There's
know.
no water.
It may look dry on the surface, but actually it's quite wet, as you can see. There's still some moisture underneath, and you can even see the peat forming.
Can I?
Yeah,
That's peat.
that's peat. Yeah, that's the same we saw earlier.
Yeah, we can feel it's wet.
Yeah, it stays like this more or less through whole season. Fens and other peatlands are amazing, not just because of their species diversity, but also because they accumulate and store carbon.
And how does it work?
Through photosynthesis. Plants absorb carbon dioxide from air and store it in carbon compounds such as carbohydrates and starch.
What's so important? Who cares about?
Well, I cannot explain it to you as good as a good friend of mine. That's why I come here. I will show you a video of her. She will explain it to you.
Peatlands have a high water table and very specific conditions like acidic waters and peat. And in this kind of conditions, plants grow and photosynthesize and bind carbon, but this photosynthesizing biomass or those plant tissues, they don't decompose fully, but accumulate as peat. And so carbon is bound inside the peat from those plant tissues. And in these cases, this peat layer grows, and this carbon is kept inside this peatland as peat. But if there is some human disturbances, peatlands can turn from carbon sinks to carbon sources.
So these natural peatlands absorb carbon dioxide through photosynthesis. They help to reduce the greenhouse effect. We rely on our natural carbon sinks like oceans, forests and peatlands to absorb our CO2 emissions.
Mm-hmm.
When the fen or bog is wet, there are many microorganisms that create methane during their life cycle, which is emitted from the peatland. Methane is another greenhouse gas, but the life period of methane in the atmosphere is about 10 years. CO2 is lasting in the atmosphere for a much longer time. So if we are looking at it in the long term, natural peatlands are only carbon sinks. They emit smaller amounts of methane and absorb large amounts of CO2. But peatlands have taken up and released greenhouse gases for millennia since their formation. When this is considered, the effect of CO2 uptake considerably outweighs methane emissions.
We have just arrived at the raised bog. As you can see, it's quite diverse and actually old. In this case, this raised bog is 4,000 years old. There are some even more older in the northern Europe, could be 9,000 or so.
Yeah.
And yes, these are in many cases formed on peatlands I mentioned before, like transitional mires or fens.
How thick is that? Can you tell us a little bit?
Ah, yes. You see, it's actually quite thick, as you can see. It goes all the way in.
Oh, wow. Okay, quite thick.
Yes, the layer has grown so thick actually that the upper plants, they no longer receive nutrients from groundwater. And this is the part where the new species, these sphagnum moss, comes in. It grows like on top of the old plants. It forms layer on layer, and yeah, this is how this bog grows. The central part of the bog, it usually grows quicker because there is much more water. And yeah, this way it forms the dome shape that is characteristic for many raised bogs. And yeah, in time this dome becomes so large that it forms cracks, and these cracks fill up with water, creating lakes and estuaries where watering birds use for resting.
Okay, but more peat also means more carbon stored.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way it is.
Because of the thick layer of peat, raised bogs are the champions of carbon uptake and storage.
The peatlands are the biggest carbon sinks globally in the world in comparison with forests and all other vegetation types combined. And peatlands store more carbon, twice as much as carbon as forests. So they're underestimated, but very important.
What use do peatlands have for us?
For example, they act as natural flood barriers.
Yeah.
Oh,
How?
Let me show an experiment. So, right here, you see this is sphagnum mosses that grow in bogs. You see, the thing is that they can absorb large amounts of water, and by doing so, they can absorb, for example, waters when it's excessively raining or when the snows are melting in spring. And they absorb this water and they hold it. Therefore, these high water level fluctuations are prevented. Basically, prevents floods.
And it can hold a lot of water? This?
Yeah. Let me show you. I suppose it will take some few seconds.
Oh.
See, it's actually like a sponge.
oh,
Yeah, all that water goes back in.
For many people that live near natural peatlands, picking berries in the peatland has been a part of their sustenance. Even today, some people earn a considerable amount of money by picking and selling berries in the market. Peatlands also attract tourists, with people spending their time in and around natural peatlands, hiking, birdwatching, and having fun in different ways. The industrial use of peatlands can, however, have a considerable impact on them.
Quite an area, this whole place.
Toms, can you tell me, this ecosystem seems very useful and beautiful, how it is. Why and how did we start to dig them up?
In the Baltic region, the use of peat became widespread in the 17th century when peat extraction for burning increased. Peatland exploitation became more intensive in the end of the 19th century and reached its peak in the 20th century when peat extraction became highly industrial and generated a lot of income.
Peat extraction is important for Baltic states. Extracted peat is mainly exported to foreign countries like Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, and other countries. Peat substrates are used in growing media, in gardening, agriculture.
But how is the peat extracted? If it's so wet, doesn't the heavy machinery sink in it?
Well, that's why drainage was introduced. As you can see here, this is a drainage ditch. It was made to lower the water level and drain the peatland.
Oh, so they drain it.
Yeah, and it's actually the drainage and drainage ditches are they have quite a great impact on the peatland, even if the peat is not extracted.
When ditches are dug and the peatland is drained, the water level is low for most of the year and the oxygen can reach the deeper layers of peat. Then the peat oxidizing bacteria arrive and the decomposition of the peat starts. The previously stored carbon is slowly being turned into CO2 and emitted from the peatland. With time, the peatland loses the natural diversity of plants and animals and overgrows with a few species of bushes and trees.
So drained peatlands are very prone to fire because water level in such places is very low due to effect of drainage systems, and upper layers are dry and they catch fire very fast. And when such places catch fire, so they burn for a very long time, and the fire goes into deep layers. So peatlands may burn for months in dry weather. And during fire, huge amounts of carbon dioxide is emitted to the atmosphere.
Abandoned peat fields that are left after peat milling are a relevant problem. Peat milling became popular in the 20th century as the main method for peat extraction. A peatland is drained in a large area and then milled for many years. It is turned into barren land, and if nothing is done, it stays almost lifeless for an indefinite time after peat milling has ended, with very limited plant cover. Researchers working in peat restoration fields have come up with several methods of addressing this issue.
In all cases, the main techniques that are applied is blocking of ditches, which means that we can build peat dams, or sometimes these are dams of plastic piling or mineral ground or boards, or there are different approaches used in Europe and also in some other regions. The second thing is what we can do is filling the ditches, which means that there's no ditch anymore and no drainage anymore.
Before closing ditches, many months of preparation are needed. First, underground water table monitoring needs to be done at different spots in the peatland to know how high the current underground water table is at different times of the year. Then comes careful modelling by which the best scenario is chosen, where to place the dams, which ditches to fill, what kind of dams to use, and so on.
In many cases, we can restore the hydrology, but the species are not coming back. This problem is well pronounced in fragmented landscapes, especially in West Europe. But in cases when the mire vegetation, the peat-forming vegetation is not re-establishing, or the process is too slow, the plants can be reintroduced by planting or by sowing seeds or by spreading sphagnum fragments, which are methods that are becoming increasingly popular.
In fact, some of agricultural lands are actually in places where there used to be peatlands before.
Now I understand. The peat that is here is also the same that we've seen in the bog, and it's also similar to what my granny was using in her flower bed.
Yes, it actually is.
Transformation of peatlands for agricultural use was particularly the case in Central Europe. In countries like Poland and Germany, there, fens have been the dominating peatland type, and most of them have been transformed into intensive agricultural land.
If we look to the history, there was the foremost need in former times, like a century back, was to fight the hunger. So to make land use more efficient. And one of the ways to make land use more efficient was to drain actually peatlands, because in peatlands not only carbon is stored, but many nutrients are stored. So these areas, once drained, have been quite suitable for agricultural use. So our grandfathers did drain those peatlands, which we now try to become wet again. Now we are in the lucky situation that we are developed, that no one has to starve in Europe, and now we have to really do our job and restore the peatlands.
For thousands of years, peatlands have played an incredible role in regulating our climate and providing various ecosystem services. Our task today is to restore as many peatlands as possible so that future generations can benefit from our natural heritage.